Well, I see that people are still arriving, but I suggest, Abida, that we start. No, probably will be a good idea.
Yes.
So, everyone, a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is titled "Tackling Food Waste with Technology: A Pyramid Approach for Convention Centers and F&B." And this webinar is, of course, as you can see, is brought to you by the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative. Maybe those of you who are relatively new to the initiative, the Net Zero Carbon Events is a true global collaborative platform within the business events industry dedicated to decarbonizing our industry and focusing on different priority action areas, one of which, of course, is indeed food waste. A topic which is sadly often overlooked by our industry. And as you might recall, we have organized already a webinar covering introduction into the food waste a couple of months ago. This webinar is already uploaded on the Net Zero Carbon Events YouTube platform, so you can take a look in case you've missed it. And today we're going to dive a bit deeper into the topic, covering how a systematic approach could help us minimize food waste and what role technology can play. We will also explore real-world practical solution guided by industry leaders. There will be interactive chats and polls, so you will be able to try them out. So, by the way, there is a poll now, so it will be quite interesting to understand where you guys are from. So do participate. It's always interesting to know. And I would also like to introduce the wonderful moderator today of this webinar, who is Abida Davis, the Sustainability Officer at the Cape Town International Convention Center, CTICC. Abida is a sustainability professional who values collaboration, continuous learning, and pragmatic solutions. She holds a master's degree in sustainable development and a Bachelor of Science in economics and environmental and geographical science. And before CTICC, she worked across both NGO and corporate sectors to advance sustainability literacy and drive meaningful action. So we're absolutely thrilled that Abida agreed to moderate this webinar. Thank you so much, Abida, and the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody from literally all over the world. We have Thailand, Germany, Netherlands, London, Singapore, Manchester. This is truly a global collaboration. So I have the great pleasure today of sharing a virtual stage with Ben as well as Jess. So Ben is a passionate food waste expert and is also the founder and CEO of Light Blue, which is a UN awarded tech and consultancy company established in 2012. He has dedicated his career to tackling food waste globally in hotel groups, restaurants, government agencies, as well as international organizations. He's the designer of the award-winning FIT food waste tech and co-founder of the leading international certification, the Pledge on Food Waste. He has trained over 5,000 culinary professionals and led more than 500 food waste prevention projects across 30 countries. Hi, Ben, how are you?
Hi, very nice to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction.
Awesome. And Jess is the Corporate Social Responsibility Manager at ICC Sydney. She draws on over 13 years experience in environmental management to drive ICC Sydney's CSR strategy and legacy program, delivering positive environmental and social impact in line with the venue's strong commitments. She is passionate in supporting event organizers to reach their CSR objectives and leveraging the wide-reaching influence of events to create a more sustainable and equitable future. Hi, Jess.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, and I'm so excited to have everyone on the call to join us in this conversation.
Awesome, thank you both. So let's go on to our agenda for today's webinar. So to provide context, we have to look at our planetary crisis and how food waste contributes to this crisis. We will then look into a framework which helps to prevent food waste actually reaching landfill. Benjamin will talk us through some of the technologies that exists for food waste. And then Jess will also show us how tech helps with food waste prevention at ICC Sydney. Finally, we will wrap up with a Q&A session where you can engage directly with these experts. So please feel free to type in all of your questions in the chat section. So let's start off now with looking at our planetary boundaries. Everybody loves a good dashboard. Now, imagine a dashboard for the entire planet and its health. That is the core idea behind the planetary boundary concept, to define a safe operating zone for humanity. However, a recent update has shown that 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries have now been crossed, suggesting that the Earth is well outside the safe operating space for humanity. And our food system, which includes food waste, places pressure on 5 of these boundaries, the most notable being that of climate change. So if we look at how much food loss and waste generates to global greenhouse gas emissions, that is almost 5 times that of the aviation sector, as well as taking up significant biodiversity loss, equivalent to almost a third of the world's agricultural land. These are some of the planetary boundaries that have been crossed, as shown in the previous slide. So we have 1.3 billion tons of food waste on an annual basis. And I'm from South Africa, so that's equivalent to over 200 million African elephants. Food waste and loss reflects an inefficient allocation of resources. It's lost time, energy, and money, and is also morally questionable when 2.4 billion people experience moderate or severe food insecurity. So what does this mean in terms of absolute money? So on the global economy, food waste is approximately $1 trillion US dollars. So if we go and look into our industry itself, we are all in the business of connections, and the best connections occur over a good meal. But looking at the food service sector, we actually contribute to 10% of global food waste. And according to ICA data, the average event wastes between 15 to 20% of its produced food. That is 163 grams per delegate per meal. Over 50 kilograms per event is just wasted. So as we continue to zoom into the events industry, let's have a quick poll as to which part of the events industry you represent. Organizers, great. Venues, okay, it's a 50-50 split at the moment. Ooh. Organizers, okay, good, because you guys are responsible. Tech industry, good, 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 great. No suppliers, very, very, very interesting. Okay, so now Ben, oh, we have more coming in. Organizers, we have other tech industry. Okay, very, very interesting. But now Ben, the focus of today's webinar is food waste technology. Can you walk us through the food waste hierarchy and its importance?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Abida, for the introduction. Before walking you through the pyramid, you can see my screen. All good? Yeah, perfect. So just to give a bit of background, because yes, as you said, I'm a bit of a food waste geek. I would call it this way. 13 years doing nothing else but food waste prevention, for the reason you mentioned, the fact that there is so much food going to the bin. I love food. It hurts me badly when I see all this food going to the bin, and that's how I started. Long story short, 13 years in the industry of tackling food waste, preventing food waste. historically more in the hospitality sector, now more and more with the higher education in the MICE and the professional event industry over the past 2 years with ICA, with the Michelin Guide, striving for zero food waste to landfills. So now I really would like you and the attendants to think about what is, to me, one of the most important components when you think about tackling food waste, because we hear a lot of, okay, I'm redistributing my surplus, I'm doing the right thing. But those are the, I would say, the steps that you should take into account if you really want to address the issue of food waste. And what we're going to be looking at today is what are the existing technological solutions that exist at different steps. We're going to have also Jess presenting on her side what she's doing with the ICC, and then we're going to move on with the other type of solutions. But this framework is super important. The most important part is preventing. So anticipating and trying to minimize the amount of food surplus or food waste. Then moving down one level, what I would call food surplus is edible foods that would end up in the bin if you have no system to transform it or transfer it or work with charity to feed people. One level below is feeding animals, so making sure that the food is sent to feed animal, and ideally animal that enter the human food supply chain, and transforming to avoid landfilling. In this pyramid, if you have to keep in mind one thing, is this pyramid, so that you can focus on what are the highest impact solutions. So on the preventive side, we selected, and don't get us wrong, this is not an exhaustive list, is some pick and choose type of technology that exists at different levels. So here we pick 3 different type of tech solutions. So some are related to planning, running, and analyzing in-person, virtual, and hybrid events. That's Events Air. Predict HQ is interesting, is what they call a demand intelligence platform for forecasting, pricing, and operational decision. And the third one is called Triple Seat. That is basically a web-based platform to increase sales and streamline the booking process. This is one of the, as we know, one of the key challenge also for the event industry. You expect by 100, you only get 350, or actually there is last minute booking, etc. Whether there are multiple aspects that can influence the number of people, the attendance, and when they will eat. So we know it's a very complex thing to keep in mind. But so those are 3 different type of solutions that were identified that are worth maybe exploring. Then when it comes to the menu planning and designing. So first one that kind of caught our attention was is called APIC Base menu engineering software that is integrated within the POS system, the point of sales. So to generate menu metrics and actively track margin contributions and sales number. So that's really like the back of house, I would say, profitability aspect. And another one is called Menu Tech, to design, write, and update food and beverage menus. As we know, the margins vary a lot between food and beverages, and those type of data are very important in being able to also, optimize, I would say, your operation in real time. Inventory management, quite interesting, is because I always was surprised when I started in the industry. I was asking a professional, how do you know how many kilos you need to order, and of what, and how complex is it? And it is very complex. And I was surprised by the relatively low level of reliability on data and tech to help in the decision-making process. So there are 2 interesting players here, one which is called Marketman, and the other, 3 actually, Total Control. And the last one is GS1. And those guys do different things, but all related to optimizing your level of inventory. Some embed data or information related to the shelf life of your products. Some are really about inventory management, as well as tracking food waste, to be able to be more lean and ensure that we don't purchase and store too much food that would end up being spoiled. So those are some of the some of the technology that were kind of selected and to guide you in the right direction, that all sits in the preventive side of the food waste pyramid.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Benjamin. And now I'm really excited to hear from Jess to see how they at ICC Sydney uses this technology and data and insights to prevent food waste, and also just why measuring food waste is important to ICC Sydney. Over to you, Jess.
Thanks, Abida. For us at ICC Sydney, really the importance of behind measuring our food is because we can't address a problem we can't understand or that we don't understand. So having the data on hand has been really critical to us in being able to drive change across our business and put in place some really targeted measures to reduce our overall food waste. So I'm a bit of a passenger princess today. Benjamin is running my slides for me. So I'm going to get him to skip right through to my first slide with information on it. I think there's probably a one before that, two before that even. Thank you. Pop into the next one. Oh, interesting. I'm missing a couple of slides there from when I last reviewed this morning. So what we're going to do is just talk to a few things. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context here in the Australian environment. We're not strangers to food waste in Australia. It's absolutely a problem for us as well that reflects what's also happening across Europe. In Australia, we know that we waste over 7.6 million tonnes of food per year. The majority of that food waste does come from households, but hospitality and events plays a huge role in that as well. And we know that about 16% of overall food waste in our country comes from the event and hospitality industry, which is quite significant. So a couple of years ago, or last year, sorry, the Australian government really put a lot of focus on addressing food waste across our industry. And off the back of Australian government initiatives, ICC Sydney partnered with End Food Waste Australia and the Australian government to undertake a food waste audit of our business. And what that audit told us was that while we're pretty good at measuring food waste in our business and collecting that data, a huge gap for us was understanding what was coming off the event floor in the form of plate waste. So we went back to the drawing board and we were looking for opportunities to understand what our plate waste look like and to better understand how we can manage that specific aspect of food waste in our business. So with that in mind, we turned our eye towards Winnow. Now, there are quite a few available solutions similar to Winnow out there in the market. This is simply the one that we have chosen to go with. It's a Singapore-based tech solution. We've entered into it on a 36-month trial subscription. And it was a really great, easy process to integrate that with our team, roll out the training, and start seeing some results. So what were we looking for when we came and onboarded this project? Well, obviously, we really wanted to understand our plate waste. We wanted to understand how much food was being wasted from the plates coming back from the events. And we really wanted to understand and target exactly what that food waste looked like, understand how much that costs our business, realize those savings, and also come up with some really targeted solutions based on the data that we were starting to see. I'll get you to slide circle through there. Thank you. So what I really want to tell you is this slide will take me longer to explain than the actual process of implementing Winnow on a day-to-day event basis. It's such a quick process. It's a very user-intuitive system that makes it really easy for our team members to engage with. I know that for us, like with many event spaces, we have a high turnover of casual team members. We have team members on board where English might not be a first language. We have a really multicultural team, so we need a solution that's easy to implement across the board accurately. So it's a really simple system. We input the number of covers and some basic information before the event commences, pop the unit in a really high traffic area that's easy for the team to access. And then it's as simple as taking the plate waste, popping it in the bin, and the unit does the rest of the work. The unit will take a photo of the waste that goes into the bin and pop up on the screen and tell you, is this curry? Is this a sandwich? Is this baked goods? And you simply confirm what it is. And that's it. That's the entry complete. That's the end of it. It really is about a 5-second process for our team. Off the back of that, then we get a weekly report, or you can generate event reports, which summarizes the amount of waste that's gone into that bin at that event, or that week, or that month. It also tells us the type of waste really specifically, which is very helpful. And it also estimates for us the cost of that waste to the business. Could you skip through there? Thank you. So we've taken some really strong actions off the back of the results we've gotten out of the WinR system. And the advantage that it's given us is really data-driven actions and results. So we've targeted and tightened up our menu design and focused on ingredients and products and produce that is less likely to end up in the bin based on the research that we've done. It allows us to maximize and multi-use ingredients and components so that we're reducing scrap waste as well. And it's really helped us to rethink and creatively implement, in partnership with our clients, innovative ways of serving the food that we do with food waste reduction in mind. So an example of that is withholding service. So we'll hold service back and only put out really small amounts onto the buffets so that the food that's held back can then be given to people in need rather than going into the bin. It also really helped us to understand serving sizes. I think in the events industry, we have a habit of over catering because we want to give people our hospitality. We want to feed the people coming into our door. But what we've learnt is by simply making a sandwich a quarter size or a wrap a quarter size as opposed to a full size, people take less, they waste less, and we're getting much better results from that plate waste process. Just skip through. Now, this is the exciting side, which is telling you what we've actually achieved in the last 6 months or so. So in the time that we've implemented WinR and come up with some of these creative solutions to food service, we've seen about a 12% reduction in overall food waste and associated costs. So for us, that's about $8,500 saved over a very short period of time. It's also significantly reduced our percentage of food waste cost compared to sales. So we're sitting at about 2% there, whereas the industry average is around 8% of cost to food waste. Overall, over the last financial year, we sent 20% less waste to landfill across the business, which is a huge result. And we improved the utilisation of the organic waste stream by about 3% for the venue. And what's really exciting is having this conversation at a local citywide level and seeing other partners in our industry take this up, from hotels to other smaller venues. We've seen about a 10% drop in waste to landfill across the entire event ecosystem and hospitality ecosystem in Sydney, purely driven by a desire to better understand, capture data and manage our waste. And it's really also helped us to contribute to some nationwide studies in this space, and we're hoping to continue to drive that change on a national level. Thank you, Ben.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for bringing all this this great insight. Jess, that's very nice. So moving forward, so we're still at the food waste prevention side. I wanted to introduce you briefly to Light Blue's Food Intel Tech. So the system, I will skip the video because it's less interesting. It's a system that we've been designing and I would say fine-tuning and readapting constantly over the past 8 years, which has a slightly different approach than the system that was presented before, but the purpose is the same. The idea is to be able to answer all the key questions related to food waste, both for regular operation of convention center as well as event specific, as was presented by Jess earlier. So let's imagine a conference center that is running its own F&B, or sometimes rent its own space to have catering company to utilize its kitchen. The sort of system can be adapted, but the principle is the same. So answering the key question, how much, when, where, what, why, and being able from all the different recording points to capture this information on an ongoing basis and send this information to the cloud, where you can run all the data analysis. So food waste per cover, if we take regular operation, per day, per shift, per outlet, per category. So we're looking at spoilage, preparation, buffet, plate. We're looking at which shift is the most or the least impactful, and the variation against the baseline. when it comes to the event, the specificities of the event per se, then there are a few tweaks that we added to the monitoring system itself to capture information that are more relevant to professionals in that space. But the idea is the same, having a modular, highly deployable sort of technology that is less relying fully on the hardware, but more of deploying multiple recording points to capture as much as possible of the entirety of the operation. The information, again, well, follow the same sort of path, going directly to the dashboard. It's a very straightforward, I would say, intuitive way to monitor food waste. The idea, when it is adapted to the event space, is to be able to, to identify trends, to compare performance events against events, and then be able to go into the bulk of your data sets and cut and slice according to what you're really looking for. So per day, per type of event, per type of customers, and this is being done in multiple languages. But again, the metric is what matters, as Jess was saying. The idea is to fill this gap, which we have identified first in the hospitality sector, I would say, with regular operation, and then realizing that it's actually much more widespread than we initially thought. This lack of understanding, this lack of data collection, in order to understand, are we doing good? And are we doing good in terms of compared to ourselves, to your own baseline, and how are we improving, and at what level of our operation do we want to put our efforts in? Is it related to plate waste, as Jess was sharing earlier? What percentage of all your food waste, plate waste represent? And that's the first important question, because in many cases, we see that a lot of food waste is actually happening behind the closed doors. So that may be over-prepped, there may be some spoilage issue. If you present usually in a buffet format, how much is actually remaining on the buffet that is not upcycled or donated? So the approach is really like being granular in your data and understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and then being able to address those weaknesses with informed decisions. So weekly performance report, with recommendation on what should be done. You can use the phone, you can use tablets. It's a very, I would say, agile sort of system that enables even to move it around. And I think that's something pretty cool. We did it actually at ICA during the last Global Congress in Porto, where we're actually, because it was in multiple locations, which increased the challenge of measuring food waste, but we were actually doing our own in the backpack sort of mobile recording, a station that is deployable on the spot in order to capture the information specifically in those places. So that's a bit about the fit technology that we have developed. If you're interested, we'd be happy to share more. Now, back to the food waste pyramid. So we've been looking at the preventive side, right? The top of the pyramid, which should obviously be the focus for everyone. But obviously, there are other things. So food rescue organization, food donation, as well as marketplace. Here we selected a few players. Some may be familiar to you, some may not. Too Good To Go, Olio, Treacher, Yindi are those players that basically offer a platform to offer food surplus, those that won't be sold on time at a heavily discounted price. And then they have different tweaks and tricks. Like Treacher is about like filling your one box and you can fill at the end of the buffet. That's mainly for regular operations. Something like Too Good To Go, Yindi is about like you have a magic box, you don't know what you're going to purchase, you just buy it, it's very cheap, and it helps to tackle food waste. However, I would put forward other players that to me are the real unsung heroes behind the food rescue organization, doing amazing work. Here we have SOS, for instance, in Thailand. There are other players. I know Oz Harvest in Australia, Phoenix in France, and now in multiple countries, just doing an amazing work. When we worked in Porto a couple of weeks back, those guys are just, they are just like, they are heroes because they are volunteers. They don't get paid. They do it on their own time. They use their own car. They come with a small truck, load the food, then go back to the community kitchen in order to redistribute to the charities. They don't even get paid. It costs them money, which to me is kind of, wow. It's time that the industry starts shifting a bit its focus and can we not just at least like cover the cost of those guys that would capture a huge amount of food that otherwise would be wasted to redistribute for humans, because we are living in societies, everyone, where people are not eating enough. So let's do the right thing and make sure that any food that is safe to be donated is donated. Then it's not necessarily the case, but you have to move down one level again. Feeding animals, that depends on the country, so it's country specific. Europe does not permit, for instance, to have directly food collected and then transformed. Interestingly, it has to go through one step, but it's typically feasible. So here we also listed a few of those players. Again, the catering company we're working with at ICA, all of their production kitchen was collected by a company that was transforming before feeding animal. So if there is a step in between that respect all hygiene regulation, etc., completely feasible. But that's fantastic, because it's definitely awesome to be able to use food waste and food offcuts and all the things that are generated from production kitchens to be transformed and feed animal that will ultimately re-enter the human food chain. So that means you don't need to import soya from Brazil, right? You can use this sort of nutrients that are transformed to feed animals that are basically destined to be eaten by humans. And now we move one floor below, I would say. And again, when you do biodigesting on site, which is super nice, don't get me wrong, this is not tackling the issue. Remember the order of priority. It is very important to keep that in mind. And here we have some examples. One which is agtech, biotech. I love this sort of innovation. I don't know in Australia, but I know it has picked up pretty fast in different countries, where basically utilize black soldier flies, larvae that are eating the organic waste. Up to 90% of all organic waste volume can be eaten by those larvae that eat twice their weight per day. And once they grow and mature, they naturally crawl up, they are harvested, transformed, grinded, and they become animal feed. So a very nice way to close the loop. Other players like Horeca, some friends that are very active in Europe, microbiodigestion plants to be able to transform organic waste from commercial kitchen into clean energy that are re-injected directly to the grid or to the facilities. So those are typical examples. Obviously, again, those are not, I would say, entirely covering all the different options. There's some that are more country specific. There are some that may answer your needs more than others. Of course, there is a component related to how much money do you have or you plan to invest. On this point, if I can make a mini digression, is you touched on this just earlier. This is really like what we're focusing on those days is, if you think you don't have a food waste issue, have you measured it and put a price tag on it? The moment you start doing this is the moment where the eyes start, widening broad and the ears of the CFOs are starting to open up, because the status quo is costing you much more than what you think. So that's the important aspect to keep in mind. Is not because you're not measuring it that there is no issue. You just look the other way. It's up to you. You, whomever it is, can look the other way or decide, okay, we have an issue. Let's have a look. Let's measure and let's understand. But once you measure and you put a price tag, you know that whatever we do, if we continue doing what we do, it costs X. Shall we invest a bit in order to push it down by 20, 30, whatever percent? And to me, it's a savvy business decision that should be taken by the decision makers. Now, I would like to bring you shortly towards one, I would say, new approach and methodology that we built about 3 years ago together with our partners, which is the Pledge on Food Waste Certification for events. So we call it the Zero Food Waste to Landfill event. And this certification was implemented, as I mentioned, in a few Michelin Guide events ceremonies, and last year in Abu Dhabi with ICA, and we repeated the process again this year, and it was just fantastic. The approach is pretty simple in itself. Execution, of course, is always a bit tricky depending on the challenge, on the diversity, number of participants, number of places, number of catering companies, but the objective is the same. prevent food waste as much as possible, training of the staff, measures in place, portioning, etc., being as close as possible to the forecast. Then the second focus is whatever the amount of food that you have prepared that is not going to be eaten has to be kept in safe condition and coordination with the local partners so they can come and collect this food on time so that it is still safe to be redistributed for human consumption. And then what is not safe to be consumed is actually collected properly and disposed of by an organization that can transform the surplus. Purpose, again, is to avoid having waste ending up to the landfill. I'm very happy to share some of those data from the 3.5 days in Porto, 700 covers per meal, 16 meals in total, 1,000 something, 300 participants. And a lot of the food that managed to be captured, not wasted, redistributed with fantastic partners on site. But this gives you a ratio roughly 70-30 of food surplus rescued, and the remaining were food waste. And we're so excited that close to 3,000 meals that were actually captured and redistributed, thanks to this very simple connecting the dots with the players. And of course, it would probably have been much more if less measures were in place. But anyway, the results are here, and very excited to share this with you because highly relevant, of course, to you and this audience. That's it on my side. Wanted to make sure that we keep a bit of time for the Q&A. Open floor. Over to you, Alex, Erika, Abida, or Jess, if you want to bounce on anything that we just presented. Yeah,
if
Alex?
I may, I have a question, maybe like also an icebreaker here, for both actually, for Jess and Benjamin. So really loved your presentations. It's absolutely amazing to see how tangible all this is, right? And I think it helps quite a lot. My question is, more on the practicalities of it, right? So if I'm recalling, getting new technologies into companies, usually colleagues are a little bit reluctant at the first to use them and to understand them, and some are even deliberately boycotting. So how do you deal with these issues? Do you usually encounter this? Just maybe in at ICC Sydney, and Benjamin, for your clients, do you what are these challenges of initial implementation? Because the end results are obviously amazing, but it's the persuasion, I guess, and the whole process of bringing people on board is quite lengthy, I suppose. So this is something which I'm interested to hear about, the challenges and how you guys are solving them.
Sure, I'll go first. For us, I think I'd like to start by saying I'm really lucky here at my venue that we have a culture of sustainability baked into how we do business. When I showed up 3 years ago, the team were already excited about sustainability and wanting to make a difference. And I think that's pretty common across the events industry. We're people pleasers. We really want to make people happy. We really want to do right by people and the environment. But that said, we're busy. We're trying to turn over plates. We're trying to turn over the event. Our venue is huge, and we'll have anywhere up to, several events in the building on any given day. So for us, one of the main decision-making factors was ease of implementation and training. And this for us was a great solution for that because it didn't really add any more steps to business as usual for the service team. The food comes back of house, it goes into the bin. That's normal. The only additional step for them has been to click yes or no on the identifying screen if that is what the product says it is. So in terms of implementation, for us, that was a huge part of the puzzle, was making sure that it was really streamlined and not adding too many steps to the process for our front of house customer service team.
Yeah. On our side, I would say it depends. It depends. It depends who we are talking about. If we're talking about the team that is implementing the system, for us, the approach is there is a couple of things. The first thing is leadership, as just was sharing. If the direction set by the executive team is we're going to do it, let's do that together. This is fantastic. Where we come in is to ensure that we always spend time to explain to the staff why. Because if the why isn't clear, then it becomes just, another step in the process, something annoying, they don't have time, my pay is not that great, etc., etc. So the why and the social, environmental, financial impact of food waste, of course, you never get like 100% joyful onboarding, but that helps people to find a rationale behind. Once the rationale is clear, then following a step is much easier. They find their own, explanation for it. Then, of course, so I mentioned then the use of the technology has to be simple, so embedded in the SOPs and the way you run your events. So where you're going to set your food waste monitoring system or your station is essential, has to be in a well-traveled area. It has to be part of the steps they're going to go through to be as little disruptive as possible. And then I think there are other components in the mix to be adding. Typically, what sort of basic incentive systems can you add in getting the team to adopt it more cheerfully? Because we don't have that just in many of the countries where I'm operating, where everybody's on board on sustainability. They're a bit like, what are we talking about here? So to add some level of excitement, yes, incentives and or recognition works very well. Sometimes people just want to hear thank you for what you're doing that is extra. Some other would welcome, for instance, some nice eat like a guest. If you're in a hotel, use your facility with your family for a couple of hours, can use the pool, etc. Simple stuff that do not cost anything, but that is a token of appreciation, and it's part of building that culture. Because I know it's a tech oriented discussion here, but to me, tech will remain a tool to an end. It helps to capture data. It helps to make life easier to understand the strengths and weaknesses. If you're forgetting the whole component around the whole culture, the process, the training, recognition, you will only scratch the surface.
And I think, to expand on what Alex is saying, particularly from a senior leadership point of view, when we're talking about food waste, the business case writes itself, because food waste equals money waste. And you start to realize those savings quite quickly once you start measuring your waste, understanding what that looks like from a monetary point of view, and implementing changes that reduce that. It's true. The business case absolutely writes itself.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you are able to monitor not only the amount of food waste, but you actually automatically put a price tag on it. And I think Benjamin, what you were saying, I think this is indeed quite a big eye opener for for the senior leadership, in order to understand first of all, and then create some actions around it.
Any question from the audience? No.
I'm not sure if we have any questions yet, Erica, from the audience. I feel like
no question yet.
Yeah. I have a question for Benjamin. You were talking about the importance of the people management side. And this year was the second year that ICA pursued zero food waste to landfill certification. But there was a similar process that happened last year. Can you talk about maybe the similarities between those two processes and also the points of convergence?
Yes. Oh, interesting. No, it was very interesting. So both events are global congress, as I mentioned, 3.5 days, 1,300 people from 80 different countries. And this aspect is something, once you start really digging into the food waste issue, you realize also the importance of knowing your guests. And they say that. So the very different is, of course, the more you repeat, the more you learn, the better you are. I think it was also very interesting to have same event organizer, same event owner in a very different context. So Abu Dhabi last year, Porto this year. So there's all sort of preconceived ideas about how certain region waste more than others, and typically it's all like Europe. No, we don't have that much food waste, we're more cautious, etc. So we were coming and see like, okay, let's measure. So I would say the differences was the biggest difference was that for ICA in that case in Abu Dhabi last year, everything was in one location, one convention center. It was at ADNEC, and everything was happening there. So relatively simple, because everything is centered around the production kitchen, and then it dispatched the food at different moments, but always in the same location. The challenge there was that they were having other events. So to identify and to qualify the waste from the production kitchen that goes only to that event, but not to the other, starts to become a bit challenging. On the other hand, when we did it in Porto, the challenge was that there was hardly ever, well, there was one location which was kind of a hub, but every time we were dispatched up to 10 different locations, and coffee breaks here, breakout session there, food here, cocktail, CEO, reception, so that multiply the number of points that needed to be, I would say, monitored. And the challenge is that we had to deal with 4 different catering companies. So that means that you need to repeat the process. You need to train them. You need to ask whether it's in place or not. You need to then connect the right event the right catering company with the right food rescue organization. So logistic-wise was a challenge. Then I would say that what we worked on a lot, and I think was really appreciated by the participant as well, and the event organizers, ICA in that case, the event owners, was that we had identified a lot of different touch points and touch points with the participant to start sending the right message from the MCs to the table talkers, to we run something we call the food waste warriors, which was engaging with the participant and asking them to commit to not waste food during the event, which created also this, let's make this topic something a bit lighter, a bit more fun, a bit more joyful than the heavy, hey, finger pointing aspect. And it was very well received, because if you ask someone, hey, do you want to be someone that did not waste food, by default, everybody say, of course. Oh, I was always brought up with, my parents asking me, blah, blah. That's always the line we get. But the point being, from an organizer point of view and from an event owner perspective, it was very well received, and an added value to see that there is all this aspect is kind of taken care of, and that all the food that is not going to be consumed will end up in the stomach of people, and the rest transformed, so we don't pollute the local, I would say, landfills and the local community living around.
I just have a very short follow-up question on that, because we have 1 minute left before we hand over back to Alex. Event organizers, events happen all over the world, and the event organizer will travel. So what long-term incentive does an event organizer have to start implementing zero food waste to landfill? If the events are always jumping from place to place to place, what incentive exists? We say saving money, but the events will be at a different venue and a different place the next year.
I don't think in that case would be money. It's more about like this is the way we think things should be. I think it's more of a moral standpoint, as if like this is the correct way to run business. We're not talking about impacting negatively the experience of our guests. It's not about like completely reshuffling the overall, I would say, logistic. It's just identifying, okay, those issues are not dealt with correctly, and we think that from now on, this is how we want to run it. And to run this, those are our expectations. And those expectations are then applied towards, well, if you want to be the catering company for my event, Those are my requirements. Can you tick the boxes? No, sorry. Then next one. So it will also help to shape the industry towards, well, our expectations we're here now is there. Are you going to catch up? If not, well, we're not going to do business together. So it's more push and pull, and hopefully you have participants and delegates that would ask for more, because it's just, it's a feel-good factor. It doesn't impact financially or their overall experience. And to me, that's the main driver.
I completely agree. And Benjamin took the words straight out of my mouth. My philosophy and my role here at ICC Sydney is that as an events organisation, we have our strength is in our platform and our capacity to influence and inspire and drive change, not just across our industry, but across every other industry that we have touch points with, from medical conference organisers through to major exhibitions. And those conversations that we're able to have, we're able to drive the sustainability conversation and movement much faster to much better outcomes, I think in a really holistic way, which I think is really exciting and inspiring. And we have such a role to play here in that. But yeah, I absolutely took the words out of my mouth.
And if I may,
so inspiring.
Sorry, if I may, just to conclude before handing over to Alex, I think the role of the DMOs of the bureau, convention bureaus also is important, and I think that ultimately using this angle to show that event happening in their destination follow a certain standard is also something where they should come in. And typically when I was talking about the food rescue organization that should not pay out of their pocket to help the needies, this is where I see them coming in and also trying to level up kind of the practices and the expectations.
Thank you, Benjamin. I really hope we can reach a stage where it is zero food waste to landfill, and that's just the absolute norm, as a minimum.
Let's bet some money.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Over to you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for all the contributions. I think we learned quite a lot. I mean, as I said earlier, I absolutely love the approach that we have some sort of a red thread in the form of the food waste pyramid. I think this really provides a systematic approach to help us in terms of guidance how we can structure our food waste topic, and of course, all the technological solutions. I think it was quite inspiring to see that there is so much out there. Just maybe before we close off the webinar, from my side, I would really like to thank, of course, all the participants and all the speakers today. But also, of course, all the financial contributors of the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative. It really helps us to drive the topic of environmental sustainability within our business events industry. Without all of these people and organizations, we will not be able to address this topic and be so advanced already. So thank you very much to all of you. We will upload the webinar a little bit later on our YouTube channel, and I think Erica has already shared the link to the YouTube channel of Net Zero Carbon Events. So do go there and take a look. We have an array of different topics there already. In case you missed some in the last couple of years, and you will be certainly able to watch them at your convenience. And of course, we also would like to invite you to join the Net Zero Carbon Events in case you are not part of it yet. A really important initiative for our industry in order to address the topic of sustainability. We will also share a cheat sheet which we have created from the workstream of food and food waste. There is on the Net Zero Carbon Events website already a complete guidance on food and food waste. You are very welcome to take a look at that as well in case you're interested. And yeah, so from all of us, a huge thank you to the participant, to all of you for participation. Really appreciated it, and we are looking forward to the next webinars within this group, and of course also with others. So all the best, and well, happy upcoming holidays.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.